Hey guys, this is Annie with Salttown Realty and Keller Williams. I am a real estate agent in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I am here to go over some paperwork that your agent may have sent you without any warning or any explanation, and hopefully that's helpful. Or yeah, with my clients I always go through this document, but let's go through it anyway. So this is the exclusive buyer broker agreement and agency disclosure. So a lot of times as agents, we're actually required to get this signed before we even show you houses. And certainly before you write an offer. And so you might have just met with a realtor and they might go, would you mind signing this? And they slide it across the desk. And so I think it's really important to know exactly sort of what you're signing up for at that moment. So in this case, this is an agreement between the brokerage that they work for and you. So in section 1 it says terms of the agreement. So in this section it's going to have the name of your real estate agent and it's going to have the term of the agreement. So the start date is actually at the bottom of this contract, and then the date that you see in this part is how long it goes to. So I typically make my contracts 6 months long because it's pretty rare that I'm unable to find somebody a house that works for them within 6 months. Some realtors will make this a year long, some will make it 2 years long. It just sort of depends. But the idea is during the terms of this contract, they are your realtor. And so if you end up not liking working with them or you want to work with a different realtor for whatever reason, you're bound by this contract. Now you can generally get out of it by having a conversation if they're willing to release you from the contract. So this is really important that you know who you want to work with once you get this thing signed. The second part of section 1 is the location. So there's a spot to put the county and then there's a spot to put the actual address. And so if you are new to working with an agent, maybe you walked into an open house and you love that open house and you want to work with the person who is running the open house, you might just want to put that address for that particular property. Because maybe if it doesn't work out with that property and you want to continue shopping, you don't really know that agent very well, maybe you don't want to work them, or maybe you love them and you want to work with them continued on. So again, by the time I sign this with clients, I typically know them fairly well. They know me well, they know they want to work with me. So I typically, like I said, make these 6 months long, and then I make it for just the county. So that way, if the first house that we write an offer on doesn't work for whatever reason, we don't have to fill out this contract every single time. And we both know, like, okay, we're in a relationship together, we're going to be working together. So section 2 of this is arguably the most important part. It's about the brokerage fee. What this line actually says is that if there is a property that the buyer has identified that they want to purchase, the buyer will pay their agent 3% of the acquired price. I said 3% because typically that is what is typical in Utah, but there is no law about it. There is no anything that says it has to be 3%. It's just often 3% in Utah. The form I'm looking at right now is already filled out and there's 3% there because that is what I write there. That is what my fee is. The second part of this says if the buyer finds a property that is listed with another brokerage, i.e. it has a listing agent, that company will pay the 3% buyer agent fee. Whatever is written in that line there, whether it's a dollar amount or percentage amount, this also says that if that brokerage, that listing brokerage is not paying that fee, that the buyer will pay the remainder. This is the most important part from a buyer's perspective, especially if you're working with an agent that you don't know that well. If they write 3% of the acquisition price in that line and you identify a property that you love on the MLS that is a 2% listing, what this typically says is that the buyer will then pay that extra 1%. And whether or not your agent requires you to do that is up to them, and you may want to have them modify this document to show that as such. I always say that I'm here to find the house that's right for my clients, not the commission that's right for me. But at the end of the day, I do always write 3% in this section, and your agent might be writing anything they want. They could be writing a dollar amount, 3%, whatever. So definitely check on that one, and check to ask if you end up falling for a house that's listed on the MLS or Trulia, Redfin, whatever. They just pull the information from the MLS. What is the buyer agent commission, and does it match up with the contract that you've signed? So section 3 of this contract is a protection period. Again, all agents write something different in this line, but it's if within blank months after the termination of the exclusive buyer broker, that buyer ends up buying a property that was worked on by that agent, that this protects them in that event. So say I'm working with somebody, we put a house under contract, we go through the inspection and do all that stuff, and then they end up not buying that house, our contract expires, and a month later I find out that they're buying that house and they're trying to keep the pesky realtors out of it, i.e. saving money by doing that. This protects me. Me personally, I write 3 months in this section. I used to write 6, but I write 3 months. I feel like this is just a wildly personal thing that all agents do differently, and feel free to discuss it with your agent. Section 4 and 5 are pretty easy. So Section 4 is the buyer saying, yeah, no, I haven't signed this document with any other agents. That would be signing like 2 marriage licenses, I guess. You want to make sure that they are working with you exclusively, as this is an exclusive document. Section 5 talks about the duties as your buyer's agent, and it's really summed up at the bottom of that paragraph: loyalty, obedience, full disclosure, confidentiality, reasonable care, and any other duties required by law. So I always say that I work for you as your buyer's agent. I can give you all the advice in the world, but at the end of the day, we do whatever it is that you want to do. Section 5.2 is duties of a limited agent. And what that means is, say you identify a house that was listed on the MLS, we go to write an offer on it, and the listing agent works in my office. He might be next door to me. I want to make sure to over disclose that to you. So this discloses that that's a possibility. And then if we're in that particular circumstance, there's another document that comes along with it that over discloses it, basically, like, just so you know, I really know this guy. Most of the time it means that the transaction goes smoother because we know how each of the other works. But you know, it's something that we definitely have to disclose to you. Section 6 is probably the most important part of the contract for my clients because it is titled Professional Advice. Anybody who goes out and looks at homes with me knows that I run my mouth all day long about electrical, plumbing, roofing, insulation, siding, all the things. And it's important to know that at the end of the day, realtors are actually just realtors. They're not home inspectors, they're not electricians, they're not any of those things. And it's really important to listen to the people in their field for that professional advice. So dispute resolution is number 7 in this form, and that basically says that you will have an opportunity to mediate should things go awry. So if something gets messy within a transaction, you can have that opportunity to mediate. And in fact, when you fill out your contract, your real estate purchase contract to purchase the home, there's a section where you can choose shall mediate or mediate at the option of the parties, and we can go over that in another video, but you do have the opportunity to mediate. So Section 8 deals with attorney's fees. So it's important to know that should there be a dispute within your contract or people are taken to court, things get messy, everybody pays their own attorney's fees. The brokerage you're working with, the listing agent, the buyer's agent that you're working with, none of them cover attorney's fees. So and hopefully that won't be the case for you, but it's important to know that. Section 9 deals with the fact that Utah is very rare in it being a non-disclosure state. What that means is when you close on a home, that price that you pay for the home is only listed with the MLS, and it's only accessible basically to realtors and appraisers, maybe a few other people, but not to the public. So when you're scrolling and you're on Zillow or Trulia or wherever, those places don't actually know what any home's sold for. It's important to ask a realtor what the home's sold for. So Section 9 is you allowing your agent to disclose to the MLS what you paid for the house. And you don't have to do that. I don't know why you wouldn't, but you do have to give them permission to disclose that since we're a non-disclosure state. So Section 10 is about attachments. You could attach anything to this form if you wanted to. Any specific requests that you had of your agent or anything. So normally I pick are not attached because there's usually no attachments for me, but who knows, in whatever special circumstances you had, you might want an attachment to this document. Section 11 is about equal housing opportunity. So all real estate agents are required by law to abide by all equal housing opportunity laws, and we should anyway, even if it wasn't a law, make sure that we're not trying to redline anybody or get anybody into a house for any particular reason. So that should be without being said, but it's in here. Section 12 is saying that everything will be transmitted electronically. So what that means is all during the course of the transaction, you're probably going to be signing on your phone or computer unless you're unable to for some reason or don't know how to. Your agent can have you sign in ink, but it's pretty typical in this day and age that everything's done electronically. But at close, you will go to a title company and actually sign your final closing documents in ink at that title company. So section 13 is a little bit tricky. If I'm working with a buyer who doesn't have a mortgage on anything, I honestly kind of skip over that part because it's for folks that already have mortgages. If somebody already does have a mortgage or they have rental properties or something else, it's important for them to know that though a bank is able to give you a loan, they can also take that away if you kind of like, if you're weird about it. So some types of transactions can trigger a due on sale clause, meaning that that loan is due then. And it does list a few of those, but it's not an all-inclusive list. The sale of the property does not result in the underlying debt being paid in full. That one's obvious. If you sell your property but you don't get the amount out of it that you owe, that's a bad situation. And the most important one are seller finance transactions. We do a lot of seller finance transactions and they're totally legal and totally fine, but it is important to over disclose the fact that if something goes wrong within that, if payments aren't made, taxes aren't paid, that loan can be due and payable. So it's important to check with your realtor, check with your bank, and make sure that you're not getting into that sticky situation. Section 14 is saying that when you sign this, you're also agreeing to sign the buyer due diligence checklist and the wire fraud alert disclosure. I typically don't send those until you're under contract, and if you're curious about those forms, I have other videos that explain those forms as well. And then finally, the effective date is the date that you sign this, and it's way at the bottom of this contract, which I always think is funny. And so as soon as you sign this with your real estate agent, that means that you guys are basically kind of engaged or married. You're working together. It's an agreed thing. It's in writing here. And so hopefully you love your realtor. So if you're looking for a realtor to work with, I would love for it to be me. I hope you found this video very helpful, and feel free to reach out ever if you have any questions about real estate or if you know anyone who wants to buy or sell a house. Thanks. Bye.